What's up, gamers? This is the Battle Mallet Podcast. This is episode 2 on the Precipice. The Battle Mallet Podcast is just your bi-weekly journey into the minds of 4 busy gamers, their annual trip to Nova, the games they love, and balancing life with those games. I'm Jared.
I'm Danny.
I'm Trace.
And I'm Jason.
As I said, this is episode 2. We're going to talk about what's going on in our hot dice section. So what's going on in the games that we love, the games that we play. We're going to do a cracked glass section, which is just a brief jump into the Underworlds world. So we're going to start with a few quick announcements, and then we'll get the show running. So upcoming, Trace, I'm going to pass this off to you. We've got an Underworlds event coming up at the Atomic Empire in Durham. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
We do. It's a Grand Clash style event. We're not going to do the full Grand Clash 5 rounds. It's going to be 3 rounds, a little extended, just to get some of the people in the area kind of more used to the 3-round format. So for those who aren't familiar, the Grand Clash format is actually the best of 3 games across as one match. So we'll have 3 matches, so it'll be up to 9 rounds of Shadowspear, and that's coming up on March 16th at Atomic Empire.
Where is Atomic Empire, Trace?
Atomic Empire is in Durham, North Carolina. And if you're interested, we'll have a link to that on our Facebook page if you want to go check that out. I'll make sure that I post it in there, and the event information is in there. If you have any questions, just please feel free to tag us on Facebook, and we'll hit any answer. We'll get any questions answered for you. Okay.
Atomic Empire serves beer.
It does.
Yes, it does, and
It
it's
does
awesome.
serve
Sour
beer.
Patch Kids.
And Sour Patch Kids.
And there's amazing Mexican right down the street from it. So
And better barbecue even farther down the street.
Yes,
Yeah. And don't miss out, guys, because you may have a chance to win some oh my lord, I can't talk. Battle Mallet branded merchandise at this event.
Ooh, fancy.
Our first piece of Battle Mallet branded merchandise. It's one for the vaults, guys.
There we go. There it is.
Which will be useful for gamers.
Ooh, a little teaser there, Trace. I like it. So yeah, so thanks. I know I'll be there. Trace, obviously you'll be there. Jason,
I'll be running it. I'll probably end up just playing ringer if we have an odd number, or I'll sit out if we have an even number, just to make sure that everybody gets a match in for the day.
Cool. Jason,
Jason,
you'll be there.
I'll be there.
Sweet.
I will probably come to cheerlead.
You don't want to throw the rats?
I don't know. I mean,
No.
I don't know. I'll think about it. I'll surprise you because
Okay.
it'll totally work.
I like
You should do it.
surprises. Yeah.
I have
Right.
no excuse not to.
So another event that's coming up, it's actually a couple months out, is the Barnyard Brawl Convention. So this is an event that's hosted. It's a 3-day event in Greenville, South Carolina. And it's got Warhammer 40K. There's a team event on Friday. There's a 40K and Age of Sigmar tournament that runs, I think, both Saturday and Sunday. And then Kill Team will be there. Underworlds will be there. So just a general Games Workshop event. I know that there are sponsors and vendors, so it's more than just your average 2-day tournament. They're really branding it as a convention, and we're going to try to get Alan, who kind of runs the event, on the show on a later episode to give you guys more details. But it's going to be April 26th through the 28th, and we'll throw a link to the event in the show notes so you guys can go check that out. I think Jason's going to try to go. I've got a work thing, unfortunately, on the 27th, but I might be able to swing down on the 28th. It's not that far from us.
I'm
Trace?
hoping to go with Jason if I can make my schedule work.
Okay.
And I've actually been to that event. And I went to the 40K, the GT, for that last year, and it was a lot of fun. So looking forward to hopefully going again for a different game this time.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so and then the big event, Nova. So registration was this past Friday, and I think we were all super stressed out. But
There
I
were
think
no pictures of loading screens sent back and forth between all of us
definitely
multiple
not,
times.
yeah. No 504 errors received or anything like that. So,
No.
but I think everybody got most of what they wanted, and we'll have details on the exact events that we're doing and kind of what we're prepping for. I mean, that'll be segments in future shows from now until whenever Nova hits. So We'll put the link for the Nova Open Store in the show notes as well. I know that there are still some slots open for some events, but most of the popular ones have already filled up. But you can put yourself on a wait list or check out some seminars if that's something that you're interested in.
And we'll put the schedules that we signed up for into the Facebook page and stuff too. So if people want to come and say hey or come try and join the events that we're doing, they know what we're doing.
Cool. Yeah. So that's it. That's all we've got for the shout outs. Part of what we do for this show is trying to figure out balancing our lives with the games that we play. And Jason, I know you had something, really cool happen this weekend. So why don't you kick this section off for us?
I sure did. And let me first just start off by apologizing if anyone hears any coughing from a baby monitor. My daughter is a little sick, and the monitor, she's coughing up a storm. So if it comes through the mic, I apologize on this episode. But the other cool thing that did happen this weekend, other than her getting sick, is I got to introduce my daughter to Warhammer Underworlds, and it was really her initiating, like, Daddy, I want to play your creepy game, is exactly what she said. And my daughter is 5 years old, so, well, she'll be 5 at the end of this month. So, right kind of there where she wants to do stuff that I'm into, and it was really cool. So what we did is we laid out 2 boards. I laid out all the war bands, and I said, just pick the one that you like. And of course, she goes with the creepy ghost because the Briar Queen is a girl, and she's like, I want to play the girl ghost, Daddy. So she got the queens out, and we set up just 2 random boards, and I picked the 2 generic boards with like no damage or blocking hexes, anything like that. I put 5 objectives out, 1 in the center, and and 2 on each map. And then I took all the unit cards, the character cards, and I put them all on inspired. And I said, honey, all you have to do is know this is to move, right? And you get the little like hexagon, and this is how many dice you roll when Daddy's attacking you. And then if you want to attack, you look up here, and this is how many dice you roll. And I cannot tell you, like, this little girl, we played 5 or 6 games over 2 days. Once again, she is totally doing this. Like, I'm not pressuring her. It's like, she's just like, I want to play that game. She picked this basic component of the game so quick. I lost every single game.
Nice.
And more importantly, yeah, right. It wasn't like, the sad thing is as I was on my 4th and 5th loss, I'm like, I need to win just one. So I'm like, well, what do I do? But the really cool thing was, like, she picked up the dice immediately. She knew exactly that she had to roll a smash or fury. She knew how many dice she had to roll. She knew what a critable, that's correct, a critable roll is. And boy, does that girl have some luck. She rolled double critical rolls on almost every single defense roll that there was. But then really where it kind of hit home that she was getting it was, I believe it was in our 3rd game. And, I started to just explain to her that they all had special type powers. And Varklov has his special power where he can move all the other chain rafts besides the creepy queen. And it's the bottom of the turn, so it's her last activation. She's already killed half of my Godsworn hunt. And she's like, Daddy, I want to use this special power, and I want to move these ghosts onto the objectives. And does she not score 3 additional glory at the end of the round to just further put the nail into her father's coffin? But it was so a lot of fun. Like, and then on Sunday she played some Magors because it had the really cute doggy with the spiked collar.
He is dog.
Cute.
He's a
So
good boy.
cute.
He's a good boy.
But it was just a really, really fun weekend to be able to enjoy something with my daughter and, and pare down that hobby and fit it into our normal day where we got to experience something. I couldn't be prouder as a father for her wanting to engage in games. But yeah, it was fun. It was a good weekend.
That is so cool, man. So I got to be honest, I was a little inspired, and I tried the same thing with my not quite 5-year-old, and all he wanted to do was take the plastic figures and smash them into the other plastic figures. So I think we have a little work to do.
Well,
Also, the difference between boys and girls.
I threw a ball, and my dog got it, and he brought it back.
That is definitely a crit ball.
Right?
Critical.
But
Oh,
Jason, it sounds like your daughter is the new champion of Underworlds in this group, but I want you to know that you're still my daddy when it comes to this game.
Oh, thanks.
Well, I just kind of to bounce off of what Jason was saying too, and just wanted to thank you guys for your support over the weekend because I wasn't able to be here to record. We're actually recording on Monday instead of Sunday, which is our normal time because I had a loved one pass away over the weekend, and so I just wanted to say thanks to you guys for, helping me balance my life and trying to keep me distracted in times of pain. So, I didn't get to teach my son how to play Underworlds, but I did get to see a lot of family, and just really thankful for y'all. And yeah.
Well, hopefully we can nerd out for the next hour and help you think about something else for a little
That's
bit.
the plan. That's the plan. We've got a lot of nice, tasty lore to come up here soon.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. So,
Nom, 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 nom.
yeah, I'm excited. Yeah. So, it should be good. So we'll take a break here, and then we'll come back for a Remembrancer edition of Hot Dice.
And welcome back. This is the Remembrancer edition of Hot Dice. So we're just going to take a few minutes and talk a little bit about what's coming up in the current events of 40K. And one of the most important things on all of our minds, I think, is the next book that's going to be coming out for the Vigilus campaign. But spoiler alert, if you don't want to hear anything about the previous Vigilus book, please turn the podcast off.
But then turn it on later.
Yeah. Go get the book and read it, and then come back.
And then come back and listen to all this.
Listen to it again. Yes.
So what we're going to kind of do is just kind of get into a little bit of the fluff, lore, backstory, whatever you want to call it, your term of choice.
That creamy, nougaty center.
Exactly.
All the goodies.
Yes. Juicy. All that juicy. So I'm going to kind of pitch this to Danny and ask him the first question. So, Danny, why don't you kind of go into a little bit of the timeline for us?
It's kind of, we don't really know what the timeline is for anything anymore in the 40K universe. They've changed the way they keep time inside the grimdark of the far future. And Vigilus is the first book where everything is timestamped based off of the opening of the Great Rift. And so it kind of creates an incongruous timeline where we don't necessarily know where this falls in, but if you can kind of make some assumptions, like this book, the beginning of Vigilus, takes place 200 years before the Great Rift opens, all the way through about 14 years, 15 years after it opened, according to Vigilus time, which means that since the Indomitus Crusade, which is when Guilliman sends his Primaris throughout the Imperium to reconquer it, lasts 100 years after the Great Rift opens, that this is already kind of taking us back in time based off of what we got when 8th edition dropped. And maybe even the fate of Conor hasn't been decided according to this timeline yet. So we don't even know when this happens.
That's really interesting. It's kind of funny that you said that because I'm rereading Black Legion as like a lead up to the new models that are coming out, and in that book they talk a lot about how the time in the eye shifts. Like missions that the main character goes on could last hundreds of years, and that's actually been like a day for another character in the book. So I just find that's really interesting that you're saying that.
Yeah, you definitely have that coming up in this. I think they even make direct mention of that same phenomenon, we'll call it, within the 41st millennium, where because of this huge rift and the closeness of the warp to reality right now, that time is a flat circle, and we don't necessarily have a concept.
Gotta pay HBO now.
Throwing some True Detective at you guys, but yeah. So I think that's an interesting choice by Games Workshop because it allows them a lot of room to play, because we're not necessarily always moving the plot forward. We could be going back to reveal things that have quote unquote already happened, but we also don't necessarily know where they fall in. So they don't necessarily have to be locked into a very set linear timeline.
Yeah. It's crazy to think too that, like, so spoilers, one of the big events of Vigilus is that Marnius Calgar goes, Primaricize me. So he goes through the
Do you get a
Primaris
biggie fry,
Rubicon.
a biggie
Yeah.
shake?
Yeah, biggie size me. And to think that by the time the campaign of Konor has happened, that he's already been through the Rubicon.
He's already died. Other
And
spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
But he comes back.
Spoiler alert. Yes.
That's
Wait a
what he
minute,
likes.
he died and now he has a model? What in the world is going on?
Yeah,
It's
I thought
just
that
like
didn't
his
happen.
dad.
Ooh.
So
Just to be clear though, he's not dead in the timeline. When he goes through the process of becoming Primaris, he dies on the table and is dead for like half an hour, and then his body accepts the process and he comes back to life, which is very similar, if you remember, to how the Gilliman thing happened in the Gathering Storm. He pretty much died and then came back. So there's something probably symbolic there.
So what you're saying is that your brain was hiding in the corner in the surgery room for Marnius as well?
Probably.
Putting
There
that
was-
Xenos taint on there?
There
So
was
it's just an
apparently a lot of
Ultramarines
little
thing.
cherubs singing, and that's what did it. Yeah,
any
he's
other
terrain piece.
chapter, any other chapter could just do it and take it, no problem. But those Ultramarines, they have to die first and then they come back.
That's
We are
right.
drama queens. We like being front and center.
Yeah.
So, kind of to go off that a little bit. So, what do you got? Like, what factions are involved? What factions do you think play the most pivotal roles in the Vigilus book?
So there's a lot of the Space Marines chapters. Some of the box sets that have been out have revealed that. So the Space Wolves are definitely there. Ultramarines are obviously there.
Whoop.
There's
Crimson Fists.
the Crimson Fists are there. The
Dark
Iron Hands are
Angels.
there. Dark Angels are there.
White Scars.
And the name of the chapter is escaping me. They're a Primaris only successor chapter to the Ultramarines.
Yeah, I don't remember either, but there's a couple Primaris
Yeah.
chapters. There's some Sisters of Battle. There's
Obvious Imperial Guard.
And the AdMech are guarding one of their Forge worlds there.
Well,
Or their Forge.
I mean,
their
it's an
forges
AdMech
there.
heavy world. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
The planet is kind of split between three forces. Jared, help me out. One is the Mechanicus.
right.
Um,
Then there's
there's
the Ecclesiarchy has one.
That's right.
Right.
The Ecclesiarchy is involved. So that's like the religious folks, right?
Right.
And like the red tapey figures.
Right.
And then and you have there's a planetary governor, of course, because it's
Right.
Imperial.
Right.
And those three kind of at the onset of this are already Game of Thronesing the hell out of each other and stabbing each other in the back and trying to gain sole control of this planet. Because of course that makes sense when there's a big giant warp storm covering your entire
Right.
planet.
Naturally. Yeah. That's what I think. Giant rift in the sky opens with, faces leering down upon me. And the first thing I think is, let me fight with my neighbor about water. Yep.
Right. And like one of the intriguing things I think about this setup is we have an incredible story here written. And we talked about how like the timeline has given Games Workshop a lot of room to play in the product world. But you look how they set this up from a product launch standpoint. Everything they've launched in 40K over the last year has tied directly into this.
Yeah.
Any one of those box sets, Kill Team, Rogue
Yep.
Trader,
Yeah.
even to a certain degree, I think it's a little more tangential, but you could make a case for Blackstone Fortress.
Mm-hmm.
Speed Freaks ties directly into this.
Yeah.
Like, they've been building this
Yeah.
for years.
So speaking of Speed Freaks, right, that ties in more factions. So the orcs
Yeah.
are there, and so some of the stuff, of course they're in they're in their space rocks, and the descriptions. I'm pretty sure, and I could be making this up, but I'm pretty sure that it says that they're surrounded by like blue spheres of energy, aka like orc force fields.
Weird
Dim-
boys.
Dim weird boys, and I want to say they use the word bounce when they hit the surface.
Orcs don't bounce. Let's be real.
Well, I mean, squigs are orcs, right? And squigs are bouncy.
Yeah.
So, but I think one of my favorite things about the orcs is the reason that they discovered that the force fields around the different hive cities ended up being down is because the orcs were constantly basically daring each other to run through the force field to see what happened. And at some point, an orc went through and nothing happened. And so the orcs then realized, oh,
It's
the
party
force fields
time.
are down. Let's go.
Which
Well, and so
go ahead, Trace.
correct me if I'm wrong, but like the orcs are there just basically racing each other the whole time, right? Like that's what the speed freaks are out there doing. They're just having races, which is why that whole box like comes into play.
Well, yes and no, because the orcs arrive around the same time as the Great Rift,
Okay.
and they all land, and they can't. So Vigilus is a big desert planet where instead of continents, they have these huge continent-sized cities. And each one of these continent-sized cities is guarded by a big force field. And once the orcs figure out that they can't do what orcs love doing, which is shooting and bashing, because they can't get through these force fields, some
Then they resort to
particularly
racing.
fun orcs decided, well, let's just race around the planet.
Gotcha.
And so that's how the Speed Freaks things kind of started until what Jared said. But then those of you with a keen ear are probably wondering, well, how did one of these force fields get down?
Oh, how did it get down, Danny?
Well, I introduce you, my friends, to the Pauper Princes, which are the Gene Stealer cult, which is another product that Games Workshop has deftly launched on the foreground of this whole thing. They've been there for 200 years, plotting and worshipping a giant Gene Stealer. And when the orcs arrive, they kind of freak out because their big plan, this like multi-century plan to overthrow this planet and make them all ready for a Tyranid invasion, goes to pot because the orcs are there causing chaos.
Mhm.
And so they decide we have to launch our big sabotage now. And they start uprising throughout all of these cities. So now you have struggles in the cities, you have ravaging orcs outside the cities, and you have a tripod government that's basically at each other's throats at all times,
Yeah.
and a big hole in the sky.
In my
And there's
mind, I'm hearing the line from the American Tale when she's like releasing the secret weapon out of like the. Y'all remember
Yes.
the American Tale?
Yeah.
We wish the secret weapon.
That's what I'm hearing in my head of this like Gene Stealer cult leader at the bottom of the mine, like trying to let out all this
Yeah.
stuff.
No, it's crazy. And there's like a webway portal in the north. And so the Drukhari are constantly raiding.
that was honestly my favorite part of the whole book, because like every now and then they'd be like, oh yeah, there's Drukhari here too.
By the way.
Like literally it's all it would be. It was like, oh, they killed a bunch of stuff and
Yeah.
they were hurting some animals because
Took some slaves and peaced out. They'll be back.
Yeah.
like
So-
I have notes for the show, and my notes for the Drukhari says ... Oh yeah, Drukhari.
Oh yeah.
That was
Oh, yeah,
literally all I thought the whole time.
So I mean that's awesome that there's 1,000 factions, and like you said, GW's been building this campaign for a long time to integrate as many armies as they possibly can. But why Vigilus? Well, like why is it so important to the war effort? Like why is everyone gathered there?
Oh, that's a good question, Jason. So Vigilus is a critical point in the only passageway from the original Imperium into the Imperium Nihilus. So the Dark Imperium that's on the other side of the rift, separate from Terra, separate from the Light of the Emperor. So it being held by the Imperium means that the Imperium has a clear-ish passage between those two kind of imperial bastions. And if Vigilus falls, then eventually what's going to happen? What the inevitable result is that the Imperium Nihilus will become under Chaos's rule.
Which we cannot allow.
Nope.
Yeah, yes, we can.
Easy trace.
My boy's coming back.
So basically, that whole part of the story is just setting the stage, though. In a plot twist that should surprise absolutely no one, those three parties vying for control of the planet, the Ecclesiarchy, the Mech, and the Imperial government. Trace, if I had to give you three guesses, but the first one was the only one that counted, who do you think has infiltrated that entire group? Good guess. It was the Gene Stealer cults. Because of course they did.
Right.
And that's when my big boy, Marnius Calgar, shows up, double fisting all the bad guys in the face,
Yeah.
reestablishes Imperial control of the planet, and calls all of his Space Friend besties, known as all those Space Marine chapters we talked about, to the planet. So now we have another faction on the planet,
Yeah.
or factions.
Yep. Dim Ultramarines. And he's like big Papa Smurf now.
Yeah, like an extra foot taller
Yeah.
and like 4 more organs.
Yep.
But
Trace, I think you're muted, buddy.
uh-oh.
Sorry.
Oh, you back.
That's why I didn't answer your question.
There it
Yeah,
was.
I
I
was
was like, that's
just
a
hanging out.
dramatic pause and a half.
My bad. So do you guys have any like favorite battles from the book? Any favorite moments that you thought were like, oh shit moments?
For me, I think there's some really cool, morally gray stuff that happens in this story that kind of surprised me. Like, I know the 41st Millennium has always been a little like, who really are the good guys, right? But this was to me one of the first times that it punched me in the face, but it wasn't super obvious. Like, Jared, I know you're a Grey Knights guy, and there's that whole thing where they like killed a bunch of Sisters of Battle, right?
Right.
That was like that's a moment that the fans don't particularly love because it seemed to kind of come out of nowhere and was like gratuitously violent. It wasn't morally gray, it's morally dark, right?
Yeah. Right. Morally
this-
black is what I would call that.
Right. This felt like there were some key events in this story that I thought felt truly morally gray that put the characters in interesting positions that kind of paints the Imperium in a less than savory light.
Well, I mean, it's always been considered less than savory, I would think. I mean, they don't call it the Grimdark for a reason. And I think people who read some of the darker books, like if you've read any of the Eisenhorn books or you read anything like that, like they do some shady stuff to get things done. And I think this book just kind of brings that a little bit more to the forefront for those who don't necessarily read the novels.
Right. Well, like that, and I think the only place where I'm going to differ with you on that, though, is like most of that stuff usually has to do with like the already shady organizations, right? Like
Of
Space
course, yeah.
Marines are almost always pretty much like we stand, especially like the Ultramarines, like we do everything right all the time. We're insufferable.
Right.
In this book, that's not the case,
Right.
for sure. Like Gilliman makes some tough decisions. Like something that I think about a lot when I read this book was like he basically passes an order to the Crimson Fists to protect a escape route from infestation from a Nurgle infestation because of course Nurgle are there too. And he has them just mow down everybody.
Well,
Like
so
people-
Danny, let me interrupt you, buddy, because I actually I made a note of this event, the one that
Okay.
you're talking about, and I've actually got a quote from the book. So
Please hit me with it.
yeah. So they've been set up, and Gaiman has made this decision that containment is the most important thing. So the
Calgar.
Calgar has made this decision, and so the passage begins. The true cost of this decision, of course, was to the civilians. With one curt order, Calgar abandoned tens of millions, damning them from Glaive Point to the Rescolid Underworks. Refugees fled in great crowds, seeking to be let along the fort wall to Hyperia. They were held back by the Crimson Fists assigned to that region, for hiding amongst the unsullied citizens, and even the Astra Militarum were neophytes and broodbrothers in thrall to the pauper princes. When rocks were thrown by protesters, the Space Marines opened fire. The resultant carnage was to form an indelible blemish on the honor of that chapter, especially given that they were later forced to concede the fort wall to the cultists. Still, Calgar was convinced their actions had been necessary.
Wow.
Like that's not something you see from the Boys in Blue very often.
Yeah, I cried a little tear when I read that part.
Yeah, I bet you did, man. You love your fists.
I do, and
Yeah.
because of the honor that they bring to the chapter and the Imperium, like they were, the one true chapter that kind of stood by everything. I mean, Cantor gives up basically Rin's world, like concedes it to be a defeat and not punish the orcs, and buries all that to rebuild this chapter. And like that's the kind of the way they've operated throughout the history of the Imperium is long-term goals and honor above all else, and to just massacre the civilians. It made me feel like the Dark Angels had infiltrated the Crimson Fist. So
Yeah, and that's not the only time. I don't think it's the Imperial Fist. I think it's the Iron Hands do it, or maybe it's the Mechanicus. But again, under
Yeah.
Calgar's order, they burned down a whole section, basically a subcontinent, because the Nurgle Gellerpox was going to hit these shipping lanes, And so they burn that whole section down, and again, just to find that 3 ships infected by the Gellerpox still make it off the planet.
Yeah. And that was actually, so the follow-up to that, those ships, was actually one of my like favorite short story moments from the book. Because there's a rogue trader, and she discovers that there was a ship that left the port before the cleanse. And so she gets in her fastest ship, which is not a war vessel, to track down this raider. And it's like at the I can't remember the name of it. There's like a turning point where the ship would be able to make warp space, far enough away from the planet's gravity and the sun's gravity to be able to
jump
safely
point, basically.
Yeah. And so she catches up to the ship. She's got her and like her finest crew. And so they don't have any weapons on the ship, so they have to board the ship. And so it doesn't detail what happens. The only thing that you're told is that she's the only one that makes it back. And as soon as she gets back, either she looks through more records or somebody comes to her with more records that 2 other ships left on the same day. And at this point are now sending Gellerpox infected towards Terra.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they're definitely planting seeds all over this.
Yeah.
Like for me, I think my favorite little mini story was, so after these shields fall, the orcs, of course, pour into these cities, but they're orcs, so they get beat back pretty often. And so they keep coming back with like mech boys, and then like killicans, and then stompas, and then like huge stompas. And it basically sparks this one house of Imperial Knights to defend the honor of their house, because there's some shady, we don't know what happened at that house, but they're like a little too eager. And so they think they might have been infected by maybe some kind of Slaaneshi vibes from the Great Rift. So they charge out there, go way overextend themselves. And so they see this. So the Imperial forces decide to use this as an opportunity while all the orcs are focused on the knights. And our 2 favorite bike chapters ride out across the desert together like a huge cavalry charge. You've got the White Scars and the Raven Wing from the Dark Angels flying through the desert on their way to basically hammer and anvil and end this orc threat. And at the last minute, the Dark Angels, surprise, surprise, peel off, abandon the White Scars, and they run straight into this giant sandstorm called the Vulian Swirl. And what made this really intriguing to me is because, of course, we know that the Dark Angels will always act in their own self-interests, and that is almost always due to their little secret, and they don't want that to get out. And so there was something to do probably with the Fallen going on.
Yeah.
And there's a little section towards the end of the fluff part of this book that talks about the Vulian Swirl and how it's been on this planet. Like, imagine the red spot on Jupiter. It's been on this planet forever. It doesn't move, and yet it still is sustained. And so that many people believe that there's something in the storm sustaining it. And so now off go the Dark Angels to go find out.
So how did, like, I'm really excited to read the rest of this because I've only read a little bit of it so far, but how does this set up the events for the next story that's coming?
Well, believe it or not, it has to do with clouds because apparently Vigilus is very cloudy. This is kind of one of the most like Deus Ex Machina things I've seen GW do in a while, but the whole planet is, I guess, covered in a heavy cloud, like industrial cloud cover. And despite the fact of having Space Marines dropped in by gunship and Eldar raids and Drukhari raids and orcs bouncing off the planet, nobody decided to look above the clouds. And the reason they give is because it was illegal to look at the sky so that you wouldn't go insane when you look at the Great Rift. But
wait. You couldn't look at the sky because you would go insane from seeing the Great Rift. But the entire planet is shrouded in clouds?
Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was on the same page.
And so above these clouds, Trace's new best friend, Harkan, is up there with a bunch of Chaos Raptors and Warp Talons just reaving, and Helljakes just reaving the crap out of these Imperial elites, because these elites are the ones that live at the top of these spires, and just like everything. Imagine if like above the cloud cover is a whole new planet. Chaos has taken that over, and the Ultramarines counterattack, and it's at that time that Harkan basically takes over everybody's voxes and like all the Imperial communications across the planet and announces
80
that
days.
this
80
planet
days.
will fall to Abaddon the Despoiler.
And at the
And
time of
setting
this
up-
recording, tomorrow.
Yes, one day, setting up the new Abaddon model, what appears to be a huge new Chaos release, because we'll get into that later, but there's some leaks that are, or not leaks, but their rumor engine.
The Demon Engine.
Is,
The Demon Engine has spoken.
the Demon Engine is
And the
controlled.
Demon Engine has told us that there are many things coming, and some of those pictures are not listed in that new book, the new box that's coming out.
Exactly. And so that's what it's setting up, is more Black Legion, which has me really excited. I don't love Chaos by any means, but I'm super excited that they're actually following through with the storyline from Gathering Storm. Because if that crusade had been another, like, yeah, Abaddon took Cadia, but now he doesn't do anything, it would have kind of been a stinker, in my opinion. But the fact that they're moving this forward and turning him into a very face-forward threat is really thrilling to me.
Well, and I think I know Jared's read the books, and I've read them twice now. But
I don't know what you're talking about. I would never read that heresy. I would never say that that's probably some of the best 40K lore that I've ever read.
It
and
really
and
is.
I would never say that it almost made me sympathetic towards the Traitor Legions. I would never say that.
The Emperor is listening.
I know, that's why I would never say that, Danny.
This is not an ASMR podcast, Danny.
Challenge accepted.
So what I can say about all that is that most of what we know about Abaddon is that Abaddon, while they've painted him in such a bad picture, every time that he's crusaded in, it's been for a specific purpose, and then he retreats back to the Eye. And it's not because he's like failed or whatever. I mean, I know that some of the Imperial dogma will tell you that he's been defeated.
Real truth.
Mm-hmm.
He's been driven back into the Eye.
That he's
That's
been.
He hasn't retreated. We've pushed him back.
Tail tucked and all.
Correct. Yep. He did deliver on this last campaign, though, blowing up some pylons and making the Eye nice and large and snuffing out the Astronomicon.
Just remember, the planet broke before the guard fell.
This is
Cadia
true.
Stands.
Creed's still standing there somewhere. But anyway, so I'm personally really excited about the next phase of this, like, because I'm the Chaos fanboy in this group, and I just think that it's really nice to have what's in my mind the grand villain come back into the scene.
Absolutely.
And so I think just having this next book be more focused on the Chaos versus Imperium side, and like having the other factions just kind of play side role, is going to be a really cool event that we haven't really seen in a while, other than like Gathering Storm and the other Armageddon campaign and all that other stuff, like just all those other big campaigns that we've seen in the past. It's just nice to have that back in the forefront. So
Yeah, and I do have to say real quick, like, this campaign over all the ones that you just mentioned, like, for me, GW has done this, like, the lore and the setting and the incorporating everything together the best, because I actually want to play in this campaign. Like, the other ones kind of feel like you kind of like have to make your forces like fit, like kind of like pushing the puzzle pieces together, and they're not the right puzzle pieces. But the puzzle just lays out perfectly, and I want to like immerse myself into this lore and participate with my army on the battlefield.
This one feels more like you're actually taking part in the story and less of being drug on rails, you know?
Yeah.
They've done a very good job of like streamlining it, in the sense that, like, if you think about Gathering Storm, all of these factions are also involved in Gathering Storm except for the orcs, basically. And yet it didn't feel as natural.
Correct. Yeah.
This feels much more cohesive. It feels less insular. And one of the things that I think Vigilus does is it makes Gathering Storm better.
Yes.
Because some of the
Agreed.
threads that they gave us in Gathering Storm, when Gathering Storm ended, you kind of felt unfulfilled, but not in a good way. It didn't leave you asking what's next. It left you kind of asking why. Why did we go through this? Like
Right.
all it did was set up Gilliman and the Indomitus Crusade. Like nothing else seemed to have a ton of consequence. But now, even with like this little thread about the Dark Angels going off to that Boolean swirl, that makes Cypher's really lame Gathering Storm storyline feel a lot
Suddenly
more
much
interesting.
more intriguing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
I mean, and with that, because you've bashed both my chapters in this recap, I'm very, very hurt. But
You know,
I
I love the Dark Angels. I
I,
really
I would
do.
just like to say that this campaign has two very, very important things for my chapters: Crimson Fist, and I have a Ravenwing army. Like, so the Crimson Fist is the first time that my brethren have been deployed in mass in centuries. So don't take that away from us. We sent 5 companies,
Yep.
and the Dark Angels, yes, we may have gotten sidetracked by the swirly thing in the desert, but when the chaos showed their faces on the spires, we dispatched them within an hour. Okay? When we bring the pain of the Raven Wing and the Death Wing, work gets done.
Did they
Take
dispatch
that.
them or did they collect them?
Ooh, good question.
Okay,
Asking the hard
that was
questions.
omitted. That was omitted from the record books. You're not supposed to read that 3 sentences down. We dispatched them.
Just redact that entire part of the
That's right.
podcast, Jared, and just
Yeah.
beep.
Yeah. I'll edit it out in post.
I'm not gonna edit it.
Yes. But that's where we are in Vigilus.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. I mean, I think it just really, like I said, it's just really nice because we're just on the precipice of something great, and I think that this is what's going to be so much fun over the next couple months, and especially leading up into events that we'll talk about later when we're going to Nova. Like, we're going to be participating in narrative. It won't be this narrative, but it's going to get us fired up for that narrative too. So we'll kind of move on now and talk a little bit about what's coming, since we know a little bit about what's coming because they've previewed it. So we know now that there's a Shadowspear box coming out. We've known that it was going to be coming, but now we know what's in it. And we know that there's 2 kind of new factions in that book that kind of get tucked into their respective codexes. And those are the Demonkin and the Shadowspear Strike Force, right?
Yeah.
So
it's the Vanguard.
This is the Vanguard, not Vanguard Chamber.
No, Vanguard
The Vanguard
Company. Vanguard.
We don't know yet. That's my pet project right now. So don't make me put on that tinfoil hat.
So, but
They
there's
have a
all these
name.
crazy new models that are coming out, right? There's resculpted Chaos Marines that are coming.
Damn you, GW. That's all I have to say.
They're
because
gorgeous.
I thought I was done with Space Marines. I'm here like working on my Tyranid. And then, on the Age of Sigmar side, I'm working on those. And I'm like, okay, they're not doing anything new with the Grey Knight. So I'm safe. Like, I'm not painting power armor right now. Everything is good. And then they released that Librarian, which was one of the first. And then everything else that came after. And I'm like, oh.
Falls directly into your scout stuff that you have already.
Yeah,
Yep.
well, when you collect Exorcists, they do have 3 companies of scouts, so it makes sense to play a scout heavy army. And now they release basically Primera scouts. So,
Well, and just speaking to
damn
kind
you,
of
GW.
why I'm excited about it is because I've always kind of felt like that Chaos used demons as a resource, right? So the fact that they're bringing in this Demonkin part of the codex with all these demon engines and the demon troops, I think that's just going to be a really cool way to tie in to how I like to play, which is to kind of marry the demons in with the Chaos Marines. So the fact that they have that the venom crawler that's supposed to like warp reality and make things easier and more stable for demons to come through. And then not to mention the new sorcerer that actually has a whole new psychic discipline that we don't even know anything about yet.
Yeah.
And I'm only speculating that it has to do with making those demonkin troops stronger, or demons stronger, or other Chaos Marines stronger, just more buffs for the Chaos Marine stuff. So I think And the new Obliterators, I'm just not even gonna talk about those because those
It's
are
a
probably
family
some of
show,
those
Trace.
gorgeous models that I've ever seen. Gorgeously gross. But so Danny, like, what are you excited about? Any particular type of the new troops that are coming out? Like,
I am really excited for the miniatures. I'm a miniatures first guy. These guys will tell you I am pretty horrendous at crafting uh, an army based purely off of how it'll perform on the table. I'm all like, oh, this book says that they have 3 squads of this and 4 squads of that, and I'm going to paint them to look exactly like they look in the book, and then I'm going to put them on a table, and I'm going to pretend that I don't care when they all die, but I'm going to be really frustrated because I should have just made a better army. But anyway,
That sums
great.
up like 5
But they
years of
look
our
great.
friendship.
Yeah.
But those sniper models, those are Trace is to Obliterators as Danny is to those sniper models, and I have zero. Like I don't really love the fantasy of snipers. Like that's not been something I've never had. Scout snipers in my army. I've never had an assassin sniper in my army. I've never been big into like war stories about snipers or anything like that. I don't know what it is. It just doesn't hit me. But those miniatures are so freaking cool that I'm like, yeah, give me an all sniper army and give it to me yesterday, please. Like, and I haven't even read the rules on them. I just know that they look cool and they've got hoods. And so, Jason, your Dark Angels aren't the only guys with hoods anymore.
What if I told you, Danny, that the rumor is on those is that you can actually fire at units out of line of sight and you get more accurate when you do so?
I'd say it's got to be a typo.
That's just, I mean, I'm assuming that's a typo as well, but based
let's
off of
let's
some of the
assume
stuff
that it
we've
isn't.
seen.
Let's just
Right.
act under the assumption it's not.
So you're hitting things behind cover on a 2. How great is that? Right?
So yeah, give me that army of snipers.
Right.
There you go. There's now he's getting tickled.
And what
Yeah.
if I told you, Danny, that some of the other rounds that they get were actual heavy shots, but they do D3 damage, and if you roll a 6 to wound, they cause a mortal wound on top of that D3 damage.
I would tell you that under me, they'd still just be 1 damage.
Probably.
That seems fair.
But
I know
no,
for sure they would be for me, but
yeah. Jason, how do you feel about, like, to me, this kind of box? It's like all Phobos, which is that Reaver style armor. Like, does that tickle your fancy, or are you kind of wishing there was a little more disparity between the models?
No, I really like the models, and there's 2 reasons I like the models. One, because I think they're going for this spec op style of Space Marine, which they try to hit with the Reavers and give them a cool mask, but functionally on the table, the Reavers really never, kind of hit their mark. But
Bro, I love my Reavers.
yeah, exactly. Point made. Thank
Dude,
you.
I've made a mess with the Reavers before. Let's be real. Come on.
But
except for that one Zangor. That one Zangor.
Yeah. Left me chasing all day.
But the aesthetic of these models hit like real world spec ops, in my
Yes.
opinion, really well. So like the way the gun is laid out and kind of their positioning, which I think is a great cross between kind of like what we want a Vanguard Space Marine to look like, and the way he functions on the table. And then there's a lot of synergies with some of the maybe rumor mill rules where the forces of the traditional Primaris Space Marine will kind of be like the backfield role, and these guys deploy in up front and cause havoc. And the other reason that I'm really excited about it is it all goes back to the lore of the Crimson Fist. So, my Primaris army is my Crimson Fist army, and in the first of the year edition of White Dwarf, there's a little snapshot of Crimson Fists in there, and kind of explains their history and the way that they go to battle now after the Rin's World, where they lost their entire chapter, and they focus on kind of that guerrilla style of combat. So not only does my chapter get replenished with Primaris, but now I have a chamber of Space Marines that I can utilize. And for all the I apologize, we made that inside joke probably 3 or 4 times, but there is a lot of sharing from Age of Sigmar and the
The release pattern.
Yeah, the release patterns of Stormcast Eternals, so that's why I make that joke. But no, they're gonna fit that lore piece for me on Crimson Fist, and I think be completely different functionality on the table. The only model that doesn't speak to me is the semi-flying assault cannon, or autocannon. But the rules intrigue me, but I don't really like the model. So
Yeah, I like what you said made me think of two things that I really love about this release. And when you're talking about like the spec ops look of it, like the little details in these models are really cool because
They
like
are.
everything from like the little pouches and the knives are really like they have a real. This is the most realistic Space Marine launch we've ever had. And one of the things that really like I made me kind of like like kiss my fingers was those snipers on their right knee, the knee that they kneel on, they don't have a knee pad. It's like a padded, like cloth knee piece. And like that's just brilliant. That's brilliant. Like they're looking at these models from a functional standpoint now because like it would be more comfortable. It would make less noise when they kneel down and they're supposed to be stealthy. That's genius. And what I also love about this kind of vanguard approach that they're doing here is it's getting Primaris to that place where they can be that like alpha strike army. Like right now, like with the way buffs work and everything, like Primaris, in my opinion, are best played kind of in a bunch in like a gun line. And now like you're kind of getting back to the old school like drop pod Space Marines. Like you can drop them in and cause mayhem like in their face, in the backfield. And I think that's really exciting from a Space Marine traditionalist like myself.
Yeah, because if the rumors hold true, you're going to get HQ choices that can infiltrate like scouts.
Yep.
So you could
Or drop in with their
floaty.
I waved my hands like wings.
Yeah, veins.
Great
Yeah,
radio.
that's good.
This
Yeah,
is a
great
video
radio,
show.
Danny.
Yeah.
with the grav veins. Yeah, because it looks like I think that the lieutenant model has the grav veins on his backpack.
Yeah.
But the librarian can actually set up on the table like a scout can.
Yeah.
From what if the rumors that
Right.
we've seen
As-
are true.
As can the captain. And I can't tell you how many times I wish that I had infiltrating HQs back in 6th and 7th edition when I was playing, my heavy scout Space Marine army. So again,
Yeah.
I say, damn you, GW.
It just allows the army to be supported in the front. To Danny's point, it allows you to push a flank or set up on a position, with the rules to support the Space Marines fighting in that style, where the Primaris were just lacking. And it's a long-term plan, right? Like you don't want to show all your Primaris plans right out the book, like right out the gate. So I mean, I'm sure we'll see other things come down the line a year or two, like with a heavy support roles and stuff. And
All
by the time it's all
gratis.
said and done, like we'll have a really unique fighting force for Space Marines. But these models are great, and I can't wait to get more Crimson Fists in the army. And then Exorcists, right, Jared? It's happening.
So the Salamanders would be really happy next time because that's going to be the Drakesworn chamber.
Oh, yep.
I want them
So-
riding the Drakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need Primaris riding dragons.
But I don't want to.
Or dragons riding Primaris. Either way.
I don't want to end this segment though without Trace. I really want to hear it from you. I want to hear how excited you are to kind of rejuvenate this chaos model line.
Man, when I first got into this 40K part of this game, I tried to like ride from one game to the other by playing demons. And, when I first started, it was started Chaos Marines. It was right at the beginning of 6th edition, and they brought out all those cool new demon engines. So you had your Mauler Fiend, and you had your Forge Fiend, and you had the Helldrake, and you had stuff like that. And I felt like those releases were a little out of place. But now with this new edition and the new revamping of the models and the new like warp tainted versions of these Chaos Marines that are coming out, I'm really pumped to see what kind of goes forward with this, because the Venom Crawler, not only is it a really cool model, but it's just a really cool concept.
Yeah.
To think that it's like a mobile warp point for for demons to come in, or for demons to get stronger around it. And then, the possessed and stuff too, the greater possessed, that are supposed to like boost the abilities of those demonic creatures around it. I just think from an aesthetic point of view, it's way overdue for those base models to get a facelift. And when they released the 6th edition box and they had those chosen in there, and we saw how gorgeous those chosen were, even though they were push fit, we were just like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so great when they release these new models. And now that we're seeing the tail end of that and seeing it actually come
5
to
years
fruition,
later.
5 years later, yeah. Now that we're seeing that come to fruition, it feels like it's the right time to reintroduce those models back into the story. And so, as much as I hate that they waited that long, I can say that I'm really happy that they brought them in, and they're doing them the service that I feel that they are due with just really trying to have them come in with some pow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are, and I am by no means a heretic or any
Dark
of the
Angels.
likes. But they've really captured the essence, like where much like the Primaris Vanguard have the Spec Ops feel, like the Chaos have metal and death feel, but at the same time they look like veterans, right? Like they look
grizzled, yeah.
Yeah, grizzled. And I know that you kind of skipped over the Obliterators just a little bit because you're so ready for that.
So touched.
Yeah, those models are by far the essence of what Chaos is and always should be, with the amount of guns that they've crammed on there, the bulk that they have. Like, I can't wait to see this model built and in front of me because it is amazing. And now you can edit that out and delete it like I never said that.
I am genuinely stoked for what I'm hoping. It feels like with the rumored demon engine and what they've shown in this box and what they've done in Blackstone and they did with the Nurgle and what they did with the Tzeentch Marines. If they're going to come out with a box set of just standard Marines that look like these monopose Marines they've had for Chaos, that's going to be such a good thing for the game in general.
Yep.
Because it will feel so much more threatening to have those on the board than those. And I love those old sculpts in a nostalgic way, but those old Chaos Space Marines with like the horns connecting in the middle and like their little skinny legs.
Yeah, they just don't feel in place in
No.
this universe now. With the scale of the Primaris, the Blackstone Fortress Marines are really beefy.
No.
Like,
and so the Nurgle one, the Plague Marines, huge.
Yeah. And
even the rubrics from
the rubrics
from
are
Thousand
tall.
Suns
They're super tall. Yeah.
The rubrics are really tall. They're not as tall as the Primaris are, but they're not much shorter than the Primaris.
And,
go ahead.
And if they do that, and I think it looks like they might be doing Terminators as well, which is maybe the kit besides Khorne Berserkers that need it the most.
Yep.
And if you can get Khorne Berserkers within a few years, that model range is incredible.
Yeah, because the Demon engine, the Rumor engine, has shown all these other screenshots that we haven't actually, that you don't actually see in that Shadowspear box, which is what has me really excited. Like, I get to basically revamp my entire Chaos Force if I want to.
Right. Yeah, there's a trophy rack. There was a lightning claw yesterday or today.
There was also a heavy bolter that was shown too. That's not
haven't seen
that's not
anywhere.
shown there because it looks like the push fit was actually an autocannon. So
yeah.
So I'm really excited.
We don't know these are push fit, right?
The rumor is that they are push fit, or that they'll be
monopose
in the same mold as like the Primaris Marines are, or how they're more monopose, not push fit, but monopose.
Yeah, the Dark Imperium models.
Well, so on the Warhammer community site, they had a post about it today that says that like the heads and the backpacks, like something else on the Primaris, will all be interchangeable. And so that leads me to believe that it's more monopose and not push fit, because push fit would be, they would have pegs like the Blackstone Fortress stuff has, and crossbars that you just can't work around.
Yeah.
Okay.
So before we move on, I have two more comments. Like, just from a retail side, being a retailer my entire career, the design space and the retail space that they're creating by moving the Primaris line forward in the Chaos, like if they do revamp Terminators, like how cool would it be that this iconic unit is now only available to the iconic faction that is 40K. Not saying that you can still play your normal Space Marine Terminators, but like the redesigned resculpt would be Chaos specific, and then that allows them to have different rules and really expand that heresy style of long war veteran where the Primaris can push in other areas.
Yep.
So
That's
Definitely.
really cool.
It
And play
allows
off
you to,
old design features too, and update them. And
I think the cool avenue I think they're going to keep pushing down, and especially since they're releasing this Demonkin stuff, is that the Chaos Marines don't have a lot of those resources to invent and create, so they have to use what they have, and they taint things, and they make things stronger through want of power and want of excess, and all the deities and what they favor. So I just think that it's just a really great space for us to be in. So we're going to take a break. And
well, hang on. I think
Jason had a second thing to say.
Oh, you had a second thing. Sorry.
One thing before we close this out. So you got 30 seconds. Where does Vigilus go from here? What are your thoughts, Trace? Like, what's the next step in the story?
I think from my dark hope is that the way closes, the way is shut. And now you have this whole nother animal. You're cut off, like you have two sides of the Imperium completely cut off from each other, and now you have two fronts and this point of strength for the Chaos Marines in the middle. And that's what I'm hoping happens, because that's just such an interesting story to have. Like, I love the idea of having the good guys with their backs against the wall, but I still want them to succeed at the same time. As weird as that is for me to root for the bad guy and still root for the good guy at the same time.
Danny, you can take the Imperium side of that question. Where does it go?
I think we're talking about a fighting retreat for the Imperium. I think the way will be barred but not shut, and I think this sets the stage for Games Workshop's license to print money, Sisters of Battle. They'll be the next campaign to fight back and eradicate the Chaos Taint from the Nachmund Gotland and get us our way back into the Imperial Nihilus.
Wow, that is great. Well, with that, as Trace was heading into, I think we're going to take a break, and we'll be back in a few minutes or a couple seconds for you with a cracked glass.
All right, and welcome to Cracked Glass. This is your podcast Shadespire noob, Danny, guiding you through a question about the Shadespire Underworlds Night Vault meta game that's going on right now, and asking the advice from these three genius Underworlds players to help me find my way around these hexes and wrap my head around this game that I just cannot get. So guys, right now, my rats, they're getting annihilated by the bully on the corner, Mollog. So Jason, start me off. How in the world do I beat this frickin' troll?
A runaway.
Oh, all right, done. End of segment.
No, so for me, I'm playing Godsworn Hunt, and the Mollog bully in the room is definitely there. You definitely have to deal with him. You're going to see him when you go to an event or a weekly game. And for me, like my tech with the Godsworn Hunt is Lethal Strike card, which is double your damage on a crit. And the way that my warband, like I'm a glass cannon. You push breeze at me and my guys die, but I roll a lot of dice and I can compound that damage. So for me is set Mollog up, let him come in like on turn one. Hopefully he doesn't inspire. Let him come in, take out one of my fighters, and then counterpunch really quickly with a lot of dice, hopefully doubling the damage. And yeah, that's kind of how I set him up to take him out. Some other things would be in your deck, make sure that you have some movement shenanigans. So taking away his movement, with a transfixing stare or frozen in time. Really, your objective when you're playing him with Godsworn Hunt is to limit him to an activation and a half, because he gets 2 activations to do kind of whatever he wants. And if you can limit him to an activation and a half, and then hit him with that quick haymaker upper punch into lethal strike, he can go down. But you also have to be willing to lose some fighters and some glory. So it's not an easy task for me in my warband, but by golly, we're going to try to take him down this coming weekend.
Which would you recommend? Something that's like a single attack that does a ton of damage, or just death by 1,000 cuts?
The problem is with death by 1,000 cuts is then he inspires, and then he can double charge in a turn. So I prefer to do one major attack, but you have to know your warband and cards and play to that, because I will say that even dealing with him that way, for me, sometimes I wait too long and he's too tooled up, and then he's just popping my fighters before my giant blow can come. Like, I mean, I played Trace a week ago and I think I lost 24-4, and really it came
So that's
down
a normal game for me.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
It came down to like a dice roll, and for me, just one activation too late. Like, if I would have acted a little bit quicker, I would have stood a chance, but I did not, and that's kind of my advice
How
for
the
them.
cookie crumbles.
Yeah.
Well, Jared, how do we wind up your warband to get this massive hit against Mollog, or are you trying a totally different strategy?
Yeah, so I'm running Farstriders and doing a little bit control with some tools to strike back if I need to. But the idea behind the way I'm running them is really to deny my opponent glory. So I have a ton of movement shenanigans, Feinway Crystal, Hidden Paths. I've got Sprint, which doubles your move. I've got the Farstrider specific card that doubles your move. I've got the +2 move. And the idea there is hopefully win the roll off and just run away from Mollog as best you can. The nice thing about the Farstriders is with range, even though I'm only doing 1 damage, all of his little gribblies that follow him around are 2 health. So if I can get 2 shots off, that's going to net me a glory, which is going to net me a kill, which hopefully gets my guys tooled up. The one thing I will say is that at the end of the day, Mollog is typically only rolling 2 dice to attack. So if you're running Stormcast, you can get yourself on 2 shields, which makes a huge difference. And as far as I know, and Trace can correct me if I'm wrong later, as he is the Mollog player, there's no way to give Mollog an innate cleave. So having those double shields on defense is going to be a big part of that. But for me, a lot of it is avoiding and trying to punk those gribblies
It
to get
definitely
my
takes.
glory up.
Well, if there's any thing, like, so let's say you have a warband that is not necessarily great at the movement idea of trying to get glory through not attacking Mollog, what are some quick cards or tips that you think people should be able to throw in their deck and try to maximize that strategy for a warband that's not necessarily built for that strategy?
Yeah, so any of the plus damage upgrades, and then throwing those on cleave. Any characters that have cleave. There's an upgrade that you can play. If you roll a crit, you get cleave. If you're playing with damage boards, you can do knockback to try to push Mollog back into knockback. But I'd say, to Jason's point, if you try to, death by 1,000 cuts, you're going to end up inspiring Mollog. So, your best bet is probably going to be to go for 2 activation kills. So you want somebody swinging for 3 or 4 damage each and just pop him twice and be done with
Wipe it.
Yep.
All right. Well, then, as you said, Trace, you're the Mollog master, the big cheese of the troll underworld. What are you trying to do when you get on that board? What's your main goal?
My main goal, at least initially, is to get Mollog inspired as quickly as possible. And as such, I usually try and run at least 1 inspiration card in my deck, if not 2. So sometimes I'll run Inspiration Strikes and I'll run Regal Vision as well. And if I have a Regal Vision in my deck, I'll always try and set up an objective somewhere close to me within 3 hexes of Mollog's starting position. And I always use him. Everybody knows what he does. So use him as a bully, use him as a threat piece right there on the front lines so that people either try and come at you and give you some easy glory to inspire with, or you try and put yourself in the best position. You have to think with Mollog, it's not just run forward and smash. You actually have to think a couple turns ahead. And so what I'm trying to do is plan out my route, how I can best play whack-a-mole with my opponent. And so what I try and do is just, if I can set up larger warbands like Godsworn Hunt, Goblins, the Skeletons, the Night Haunt, they all have to set up on all the starting hexes, right? Or most of them at least. So I can usually set myself up to where I can attack first turn and at least get one glory to start my glory train, start equipping some of those upgrades that help me to get more accurate, faster, stuff like that. So I'll use a lot of the same tricks that Jason was talking about. I'll use transfixing stare to keep somebody in place, or I'll use something like that to just make sure that I can get where I need to go to get my glory train started. And those first, if I can get a couple lucky pops, the first two fighters, I've got you kind of nervous about where you're going. So I just keep pressing that advantage from that point on. So inspire early, understand that you can't just activate every time and think ahead. Use your Stalag Squig as support for you for the first couple attacks, because that gives you better accuracy because you get single supports most of the time. So he's got 2 shields. He has exactly the same Stormcast defense stats. So like, let him take a hit. Like some of the smaller warbands, they're not going to do anything. It might do 1 damage. Some of the larger warbands, like, or some of the more fighty warbands, like Magor and stuff like that, just don't put him next to somebody who has cleave. And just try and get Mollog inspired as early as possible. That's the best advice I can give to you.
All right. Well, I'm writing this down to bring to my next event. Sounds like when you were fighting Mollog, bring a gun to a gunfight, cleave the crap out of his shields, go for 1 big hit, swing for the fences. If you can't do that, stay away, deny him glory all day, because all Mollog is going to be looking to do is inspire right away, so don't give him an excuse to inspire. And he's going to try to tempt you into facing his front and just taking his big old club to the face. And not many things will survive that, so unless you've got your cannon ready to fire at Mollog's face, don't do it, Danny. And that's what we got at Cracked Glass today. Good luck. May you fare better against these guys than I ever will, because I'm still going to make dumb calls, because I just don't get it.
Well, that rounds us out for episode 2 on the Precipice of the Battle Mallet podcast. We've had a great time. Really looking forward to everything that's coming down the line from the Vigilus campaign and the new models from the Shadowspear and Trace's barely contained excitement for the impending Chaos Space Marine release. Yep, there it is, barely contained. So if you've stuck with us this long, we want to thank you for listening. Be sure to find us on Facebook, find us on iTunes. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. So, but if you like what we're doing and you want other people to be able to come along this journey with us, be sure to give us likes and reviews on
Show
Facebook.
some support.
Yeah. And if you don't like us, let us know.
Give us some feedback so we can improve.
Yeah.
Just for you guys, we just talk about it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Danny is super fragile. So yeah, you do have to be gentle with him. So, just another week, another show talking about balancing life. Jason's still super jealous of your time with your daughter this past weekend. Just raising up the next generation of gamers. To be more people who are in it to love it and in it to win it. So for the Battle Mallet podcast, this is Jared.
I'm Danny.
This is Veteran of the Long War Trace.
Nice.
And I'm Jason Tabledoo Murray.
Yeah. So this is us. It's 3 dudes and 3 dads and a dude who turns into a pumpkin after 11. So
and it's 10:48, suckers. It's time
I know.
to go.
So as Mr. Tabledoo often says, get the hell out of here.
Peace.
Battle Mallet podcast is protected under the Creative Commons license. If you have further questions as to its use, you can find more information via links on podcast.battle-mallet.com. This episode of the Battle Mallet podcast was produced by me, Jared Johnson. Music by Anno Domini Beats.
Sounds like Danny's stepping in the poop and needs to get out.
Get out of the poop, Danny.